Just before we get into this video, guys, if you want to follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, the links are here. And if you also want to support me on Patreon as well and help out my channel, that would be absolutely awesome as well. But let's get on with the video. Hey guys, it is Wingy here and welcome to a brand new video. So today I'm going to be carrying on with the ranking Doctor Who series. Now this time I'm going to be looking at the title sequence / themes. I mean, it's sort of one in the same. You can't really say that your favourite theme is this one, but you prefer the title sequence to that one. Well, I mean, you can, but I'm not gonna. So you know how this series works. I obviously look at all the different title sequences or themes and whatnot, and then I shall rank them in order from worst to best in my own opinion. Now if you happen to disagree, totally fine. One thing I will say though is there are certain themes that they're kind of very similar, or they're just not worth mentioning twice. So one example of this is the season 18 titles compared to Peter Davison's titles. They're exactly the same, except one has Tom Baker's face, one has Peter Davison's face. I'm just going to keep that as like one. I'm not going to separate them because that would be pointless. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I had to think long and hard about this, about my worst one, because I genuinely do like them all. I think the title sequences in Doctor Who are so iconic that it is really hard to kind of not only pick your least favourite, but your favourites as well. However, I'm going to have to say Matt Smith's titles from Series 7B onwards, I think it was. I think the reason is the titles themselves, they look a bit cheap. The theme itself is fine, but I just think the visuals that go along with it don't really look that great. They obviously hark back to older elements of Doctor Who, like you can briefly see Matt Smith's face there, but it is just a bit of a CGI mess. It doesn't really look like anything. You don't really get a proper sense of traveling through space and time or dimensions or whatever it is. I think if they looked slightly better, if they were polished a bit more, then these titles would actually be one of my favourites, but because they look so crappy, then I'm gonna have to say nah, least favourite. Next then, I'm gonna have to say, I don't know if they really count as titles, but I suppose the Paul McGann titles from the TV movie. It's kind of hard to sort of rank this one because I don't really consider it a title sequence as such. It's more like an opening credits for a movie, which I know technically that's exactly what it is, but it doesn't feel like a title sequence in the same way that all of the others do, you know? There's a distinctive moment where it's like the sting and then we go into it, or in, you know, the Tom Baker era it'd just be dun 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 dun. But with the McGann film it just sort of happens. It's not really natural, we just sort of go into it, and whilst the theme's good, the titles themselves are okay. I feel it's a bit too long and the theme just isn't one of my favourites. It's good, like I say, but I don't know, I wouldn't put it up there to be honest. Okay, so third from bottom then, I'm gonna go with Peter Capaldi's titles. Now obviously you guys know I love Peter Capaldi, I love the 12th Doctor. His era is very hit and miss for me, but I think one of the biggest misses of his era is his title sequence. Now the actual sequence themselves I think looks pretty cool. The idea of, you know, clocks and time sort of warping, I think that's really cool. I like the idea and I like the concept. The problem is the theme I think is really grating and it's really high pitched and it can come across like a cat screaming sometimes. It's just not fun. Mix that with the fact that the title sequence is never fucking in sync with the theme tune, so it is so frustrating. I think there's a video on YouTube breaking down how out of sync it is from week to week, and once you see it you cannot unsee it whatsoever. So basically at the BBC someone's proper fucking lazy. But it's like, as somebody who edits videos, like you don't just move the things out of the way, like you just have it saved as what it is and then just move it across. You don't just move the theme and the titles away from each other separately. Like, it's just editing 101. But either way, they fucked it up. Whilst it's a cool concept, I think the theme lets this one down, and the fact that it's out of sync really pisses me off. And I guarantee if you do go and look it up, it'll piss you off as well. Now, this next one, I don't know whether to count it as 1 or to count it as 2, because technically they are very, very similar, but they are different title sequences. And that is the original one, the William Hartnell one, but also the Patrick Troughton one. Now obviously there are very vast elements that are quite different, but I do see them quite similar. I mean, they use a very similar arrangement of the theme. There's a lot of wisps and whatnot. The logo is quite similar. And look, I know that it being where it is, people are going to just be like, here? Really? Even though it is the original one and it is arguably the most iconic arrangement of the theme, well no, it probably is the most iconic arrangement of the theme, I don't know. I think because I was exposed to this one a lot later on, it doesn't resonate with me the same way that another title sequence would. And I think that's not a slight on the Hartnell-Troughton one, it's just I don't have an attachment to that the same way that I would some of the others that I'm going to be talking about. Plus I think with the Hartnell one as well, the fact that there's no face, which I mean obviously is a common thread throughout the new series, but I think think the fact that it doesn't have a face really kind of lets it down. Scratch that, actually. I'll separate the Hartnell one. Yeah, the Troughton one I would put ahead, but I mean, they're basically the same. But yeah, so I'll go Hartnell, then Troughton. But Troughton saves it because of the face. You know, I was just talking about it then, like his creepy face just coming through the wisps of whatever they are. Yeah, that'll do. Next one, I'm going to go for Colin Baker's. Now, some people might be thinking, why is that one ahead of the Hartnell one? But to be honest, I genuinely really like this one. Now, the 80s themes I think are amazing. I love them all, but I'm going to have to rank this one the lowest out of the 80s purely because it is like the Davison Tom Baker one, but it's on fucking crack. Now, in terms of the theme, it's the same theme for season 22, but then we get the Trial of a Time Lord theme, which is one of my personal favourites. I just really like how creepy it is, and it is sort of chilling at the same time. It's a really interesting arrangement of the theme by, I believe, Dominic Glynn. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, this sequence, again, is practically the same as the season 18 Davison one, but with all the lights, it just lets it down somewhat. But I think it kind of works, not only for it being in the 80s, but for it also being Colin Baker's era, which was obviously very bright and vibrant and totally and utterly tasteless at times. I do love the way that the face sort of comes into view though, where it's sort of like the stars sort of go like here, 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 and then it just glows into Colin, if that makes sense. Well, I mean, you've seen it, you know what I mean. When his face appears, I think that's one of the coolest ways that the face will arrive in the sequence. But yeah, it's not a terrible sequence, but it's my least favourite out of the 80s. Next one I'm going to go with is Jodie Whittaker's. Now, this is the first time that I've included Jodie Whittaker's era of Doctor Who in any of the ranking series, and that's because we finally have a significant amount of things to sort of talk about and digest. Now, obviously, at the time of recording this, Series 11 isn't over yet. There's still one more episode to go. But I think it would be unfair of me to cut out her title sequence regardless of that, because I genuinely really like this sequence. The arrangement of the theme, you can hear elements of the classic series throughout. You can hear parts of the Howl theme, you can hear some of the Derbyshire theme, and there's clearly, you know, a new spin on it, and I really like how dark this theme is. The titles themselves I think are pretty cool, a bit dark, but I still enjoy them for what they are. This is kind of what I wished that Matt Smith one that I mentioned before would have been, in terms of the way that the visuals come at you. Yeah, I think this is genuinely one of the best things to come out of Series 11. I really love this title sequence. Like, I find myself looking it up all the time. It's just mesmerizing to me. As a classic series fan, to see this version of the theme sort of blend together the modern and the old, more so than any of the others, I can really appreciate that. So yeah, good sequence, I like it. Next, we're gonna have to go for the Tennant Eccleston one. Now, these are practically the same, again, similar with the season 18 Davison one. The only thing that changes is the names in the title sequence. I mean, obviously Tennant gets a slightly different arrangement later on, but it is essentially the same title sequence in it. Now, the reason why I like this one and why I put it as high up as I have is purely based off of nostalgia. This was the first title sequence that I ever saw. Obviously, starting out as somebody who was 10 years old with the new series, no prior knowledge of Classic Who, this to me is my version of the theme. It's not my favourite, but this is the one that I always associate with me growing up as a kid watching Doctor Who. More so than Tom's, which might surprise some people. Like, this was a constant for me, this theme, growing up. Like, I had pens that used to play it. Obviously, there was like remote control TARDISes, and I pretend to sort of like spin it through the vortex. And I love the bit where it's like, and the camera pans on the TARDIS in the middle of a thing. It's just such a cool theme. I love it. I don't like the arrangement later on. The original one, the Eccleston one, and then series 2 and 3, I think it was. Yeah, that version I think is the better version of the two, but it's just a fun sequence, and it really captures what the 4th Doctor sequence did, but makes it for the modern era. So instead of like really static square corridors that the TARDIS is moving through, now you see the TARDIS properly move through the vortex, and I love it. I think it's such a good theme. For the next one then, I'm going to have to go with the Matt Smith title sequence, his initial one, his first one from series 5 onwards. Now, this is going to sound really weird, but I've spoken before about how when I was younger, the 10th Doctor was my favourite Doctor, and watching The End of Time, I distinctly remember like turning to my mum after he regenerated and went, well, that's my childhood over then. But the more and more I sort of saw teasers for this new series with Matt Smith, like, I really got excited about it. And another thing that I have to admit is, and this is really fucking dorky, but I was actually really curious to see how they were going to do the title sequence, because at this point I was very familiar with the classic series. I knew that pretty much every time you had a new Doctor, the title sequence will update and change somewhat. So I just wanted to see how they were going to do it for Matt Smith's theme. Now, this version of the theme, introduced the sort of, I don't know how to explain it, the dun 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 dun, then it hits into the ooh bit. Perfect impression. Introduce that. Now, I don't particularly like that in any of the other themes. However, I do like it in this one. I like how sort of scatty, I think might be the word, like when the sting comes in. It's not like, it's more like, and I really like that. I think that fits perfectly well with the sort of scatty, all over the place nature of the 11th Doctor. I also quite like that it's clouds and it's in a storm and you see the TARDIS in sort of a bit of trouble and it gets struck by lightning. I think that's quite a unique idea and a unique spin on the title sequence, and I really like the theme as well. So yeah, I didn't realise how many fucking themes that there actually were. I don't even think we're halfway through yet. Shit. Okay, next one then, I'm gonna go with... I'm torn between two. This is really frustrating. Okay, fuck it. I'm gonna go with Jon Pertwee's first one. Now, this is kind of going against what I was saying before about the Hartnell-Troughton one. Like, this one is basically the Troughton one. However, it's just full of colour. Now, this was obviously the first title sequence that was in colour, and I just love it. I love how vibrant it is. It's very 70s, even though it was basically the same as something from the 60s. Main difference being you don't have Troughton anymore, you have Pertwee's face in there, which would make sense considering that, you know, Jon Pertwee was the Doctor at the time. It also introduces us to the first sort of logo of Doctor Who. It wasn't just generic font that was in the first two sequences. Like, this was a proper logo, and this is a logo that has stuck with Doctor Who ever since, pretty much. Like, all the DVDs, they have that logo. The Paul McGann movie, that had that logo. A lot of the classic series merchandise has the exact same logo, even though it was only used for one Doctor, and that's Pertwee. And then McGann, obviously, but you get what I mean. This sequence is cool. I just like how the reds and the greens just sort of come together. It's really cool. I like it. Okay, next I'm gonna have to go with McCoy's. Now, this is a title sequence that really divides opinion from what I've seen. Now, this was, I believe, the first ever sequence or opening credits to a TV show that was completely CGI. Like, ever, from what I believe. I could be wrong on that. And look, yes, it is quite dated now. Yes, it is very 80s. A lot of people don't like the arrangement of the theme in this one, but I just love how you're traveling through the universe. Like, this was kind of the first time that you would properly see that in a title sequence. Obviously, we've seen it a few times now, but back in the 80s, like, this was amazing. Like, there's meteors flying past the TARDIS. You see the TARDIS in like a force field or a bubble. You see the camera panning all around it. It's a really fun sequence, and I have to admit, I really love this arrangement of the theme. Is it as good as some of the others? No, you can't really beat the classic one, but this one is a really good take on it. It's a theme that we haven't really heard reworked again. Usually the default is the original Delia Derbyshire version, but this is such a really weird and dark version of the theme, which again I think summarizes the 7th Doctor to perfection. Yeah, this is a fun one. I wanted to put this higher, but the others, I just couldn't put this ahead of that one. That was right, wasn't it? Can I English today? Who knows? Fuck, which ones have we got left? So there's two left, and I'm pretty sure you guys will be thinking, we know exactly which one he's going to put where. And I will tell you now, you're wrong. The penultimate one that I'm going to be talking about is the Baker sequence, / Pertwee, because Pertwee's last season, again, it was pretty much the same as Tom Baker's sequence. So yeah, that one is my second favourite. It's not my favourite one. Now, a lot of people will be thinking, but that's Tom's sequence. Like, how can you not pick that one? And yeah, it is Tom's sequence. It's the sequence that I've watched the most because I'm constantly rewatching Tom's era. But whilst this was the one that introduced me to the classic series, like, this was the titles of the classics for me. I've even got a picture in my bedroom somewhere of like a TARDIS driving license, and it's got like a print of part of the title sequence. It is very iconic, and I love it, and I love the diamond logo, and I love absolutely everything about this sequence. I love how you're literally following the TARDIS, and then it, you know, it blends into Tom's face, and then it goes to the diamond. It's just a really fun sequence, but I think the reason why it's not my favourite is because I prefer the Sid Sutton, Peter Davison title sequence. I just have to put this at number 1. I feel like I may have missed out one. So I'm not saying that the Tom Baker one is bad, because obviously it's my second favourite. I think the way that it is a bit blocky, it just, I don't know, there's something about it where I just can't put it ahead of the Davison one. Let's talk about the Davison one then. Obviously this is going to be my number 1, and the reason why I love it is because every time you watch a classic series DVD, the music of this one will come in. It thunders in as the TARDIS just sort of roars towards your screen and the doors open, and then you get to the menu. This was the first classic theme I ever heard, obviously, because as you're going into the DVD, before you can even watch the fucking thing, it's there. But I just love this sequence. It's the first type of theme where it wasn't like a vortex or the wisps. This was the first one where it was a star field and you're literally traveling through space, and I think that's quite a cool thing. And I love the fact that the Doctor's face is made up out of stars. Now obviously this debuted in Tom's last season, so technically it is still Tom that I'm representing here. The music is so 80s. It has dated quite badly. But I think out of all of the themes, this is the one that gets me the most excited. Not in a dirty way, stop laughing. But it's the one that makes me feel like I'm going on an adventure. I'm about to set off on a really fun, exciting adventure. Now, obviously, the first time that this theme was used was the Leisure Hive, so what I've just said was complete and utter bollocks. But for the most part, you know, throughout Davison's era, like, this music was in front of some of the best stories, you know, Earthshock, Caves of Androzani, The Five Doctors is a hell of a ride as well, The Visitation, there's loads of different stories, and this theme and title sequence makes you truly believe that you are a time traveller travelling through the stars, and it just gets you hyped. And that's what I think you would want from a Doctor Who theme. I think especially for the cliffhanger as well, it has such a punch at the end when something's happening. I imagine scenes like the end of Caves of Androzani Part 3 wouldn't be as impactful if they used a different theme. My personal opinion, but that's just how I feel. It's just so punchy and it goes perfectly with the title sequence. Yeah, for me, this is my all-time favourite Doctor Who sequence. But in the comments, guys, let me know what you think. What are your favourite title sequences? Do you agree with my list? Did I miss any out? Because I feel like I might have done. Either way, in the comments below, let me know. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it, subscribe for more. Social media and Patreon are in the description below, so if you would give me a follow on any of those things, I would absolutely love you forever. But until next time, guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye. I think that fits perfectly with the... fucking hell, I can't talk.
Seriously, Davison first?
What do you mean? Well, what would you have put first?
Pertwee.
Pertwee? Really?
Yeah.
I didn't think you would have put him first.
Who do you think I would have put first?
Troughton, your favourite Doctor.
You. But I love Pertwee's too.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like the theme with the titles put together.
Well, yeah. Yeah, Pertwee's as well. Although Tom's is really good.
Yeah, but Tom's is practically the same.
I know, but it's that feeling of seeing the Doctor and going like, that's my Doctor. Even though Pertwee's not my Doctor, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I really like like I say, the journey that you go on through Davison's, like, it just gets me hyped. It's like it's dun 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 dun. I love it.
Yeah, but because I'm not excited
Basic.
about Davison, it doesn't excite me as much as like if I saw Pertwee or Tom or Troughton.
Yeah, you would be excited for Davison if he didn't fucking laugh at the Cybermen.
I don't really like Davison anyway.
Yeah, but those Cybermen are great, and Earthshock is a fantastic story. You're not winning this argument, I'm telling you.